I must warn you, this part will have 2 parts to it, and also violence and death. I do have to give that warning because I know what happens. It's not good. There is no denying that perhaps impertinency is the only contrast thing in Yen's life. Now, this may sound like such words were exaggerated, but she has concomitant experience that has brought her absolute joy to many things that gave her to her distress. Oftentimes, those same joys were the cause of her distress. Just as she thought they were going very well, then she thought wrong, for her husband seems to so much time in limiting their interactions in his not so subtle way. Internally, Yin thought she has only business with work. Hence, 2 days after Kirishima and Uraraka left, she approached him and offered help. "What are you doing here?" Bakugou asked as soon as she sat herself beside him. She observed how he slightly moved away from her, his feet turning away from her presence as if he was no longer eager to escape the room. "I'm here to help you," Yin said. "You look so busy, and I thought I would make myself useful." She diligently left out the part of constraining missing his presence. Bakugou avoided her eyes, and the parchments before them suddenly became the most interesting thing to him. Yin, with a lack of words, decided to collect some paperwork for her to complete, until he interrupted her with a no. No! The blonde didn't regard her anymore as he stood and started to gather the parchments in his hand. Yin looked towards him, worriedly, and placed a hand on his arm. She sensed his body turning rigid as she did so. "Katsuki, what's wrong?" But the time was finished, he marched to the door while giving her a cut explanation. "These are all finished." Yin was both confused and wounded. At that time, it was only a theory that he may be avoiding her by his own will. The second time she found him, she was able to confront her suspicions. "Have you seen my husband?" Yin asked one of the guards as she was on a hunt that day after her short encounter with Bakugou. The guard pointed her to one of the guest rooms in the castle, and there she caught him resuming his paperwork. The same paperwork he claimed to be finished with. Days after she caught him, Yin decided not to disturb him anymore, seeing as he went to such lengths in order to avoid her. He went as far as relocating his study to another room. She will give him his space even though she nearly verbatimly asked it. However, negative beliefs started to collapse Yin's straight way of thinking. She started to overthink, and it never went well for her. Maybe the peace they shared these past few months were nothing but false amusement? Maybe he only went easy on her once in guilt of leaving her in this castle and putting her in danger. Maybe he never really felt something so different for her and has always been the subject of his scorn. She countered that it's been a week since this silly one-sided game of hide-and-seek, and she had enough. They had spent most of their relationship not being open with each other whenever possible resigns, and this has to stop. Yin will confront him tonight. "All right, Katsuki, tell me what's wrong," she said as soon as she barged inside his office, her chest heaving up and down from nervousness, and Yin can feel that her cheeks are sprouting red tints from the walk she had from her room towards here. She has felt all the frustration and conversation coming here, but after having a full picture of her husband's state in the room, it all keys into wishful thinking. "Are you drinking again?" She marched towards him. Bakugou sat on a chair beside him, in a bottle of scotch, and on the side table. He glanced at her passionately, as if he couldn't be bothered getting caught. His whole demeanor is haggard. "No," he answered while ghosting a finger over the seal of the bottle. "I'm done drinking anymore. I know you don't like it." "Then why is it here?" asked Yin. "I thought I could help myself on a glass or two, but I didn't. I couldn't." He chuckled. "I imagine how disappointed you would be if I did so." Yin's hard face softened, and she came to sit on the carpet floor before him. Bakugou looked down, confused and afraid. She sensed that He has all the inclusions to run, so she held onto his hands. "Don't run, please," she whispered. "Don't run. Face me and tell me what's wrong." Now the blonde looks so conflicted. He's having an internal battle whether it is on the best intention to talk about the problem. Yin has no absolute idea of his burden, and she left it to herself to guess. She has urged him. "Have I done something wrong?" she asked. Bakugou almost rose from his seat. "What? Fuck. No, Yin. No. You've done nothing wrong. Then what is it? Why do you avoid me?" "It's... fuck. I don't know if I should tell you this." "Then we'll be stuck like this forever, Katsuki. Never communicating, never understanding. We'll be forever bound to misunderstanding each other, and we'll be forced to forge ignorance of each other's concerns if we don't put a bridge between us." Silence followed as Bakugou took his time to understand her words. She knew that communication is not much of his forte. Deciphering others' emotions is just as hard as understanding his own. He looked so lost. Yin tried to give him his time. She really did, but impatience and anxiety has kept up with her first. She asked him again. "Do I threaten you, Katsuki?" "No." Bakugou suddenly stood and left his post. He started to pace around the room. "Then what is it?" Yes, I am threatened. You threaten me in many ways you cannot imagine, Yin." Yin paused at his words. She knew it was the truth, for there were too many gesture emotions poured into them. Such confusion is not unfamiliar to her. She had expected it, but never prepared for him to admit it. "Ever since you defined me long ago, I was threatened. I was so angry and so scared because the life of being second, of being threatened by the greatness of my own mother, is being materialized within you," he continued, and Yin did nothing but stand there and listen to her husband's pondering his emotions. "Now I know that it's unfair. It's wrong to blame my issue on you, but I'm not blaming you. I want you to understand that I became like this, the man you despise, because I was so fucking scared of becoming second to everything that I started to become hard on my people, on myself, and you. And that was all I've ever known, to be hard and harsh on everyone. So I won't feel that very feeling I've come to hate ever since I was a child." The edges of his eyes sparkled with solemn and held back tears of his pent-up frustration. She wondered how long he waited to let this out. Yin knew she was being unfair to herself right now, but her husband is hurting. If she expects him to hear her, she must do the same to him. "Katsuki, She didn't know what to say. "You don't deserve this, man, Yin," he said, and there was no denying that Yin is slightly hurt by his words. He does not sound like he only said those words to gain pity from her. He said those because he genuinely believed it, and it hurts. You don't deserve the man who ruined your innocence, your false, childlike behalf of the world you imagined as fair and good. Your kindness and greatness is all that you do. You don't deserve me because you threatened me, Yin. You don't deserve me because I have let my weakness destroy you." He finally decided to take whatever he was left of his courage to march up to her. His shaking hands come up in an attempt to cup her cheeks, but he couldn't do it. I ruined you, Yin, because of my feelings for inferiorness. I felt threatened by your greatness, and I fucking ruined you. I'm sorry." Without noticing it, Bakugou has overcome by his guilt that he had no problem gripping at his arms. Her body shook among his wavering hold. Yin could not feel how heavy his hold is. She is far too caught up in the ring of those words he had uttered. "I'm sorry." He had acknowledged her greatness, and he had apologized. Somewhere deep inside her, she knew it was all the two things she ever asked and needed. I don't think I will be able to tell you why I avoided you, Bakugou said, his voice whispering into the quietness that his own open heart has left. Yin's eyes and nose sprung as she fought back the tears. She put on a gentle hand on his cheek so he could meet her eyes. I think I know why, she said quietly, resting her forehead on his. But don't say anything yet, Katsuki. Don't say it out loud unless you're cultivating sure of your feelings. I, too, am not sure, but I believe that if we get better, we would see how we really feel for each other. He shook his head, still afraid and unsure. Yin urged him, We can start again. I do not fully blame you for being threatened. You have your faults, some of which you have caused me pain. That's what I'm trying to tell you, he frowned. But you have no one to guide you all throughout your failings. Your mother, the person who threatened you before, was not present to be the person to help you. And if you feel the same towards me, it will be different because I'm here. I'm present. I'll be here to help you grow from your fallings, Katsuki. How are you so sure you'll stay? Because I'm your stubborn little wife, who in many ways managed to get on your nerves enough to send her into the woods. She jested and laughed. Bakugou shook his head. Fuck, I shouldn't have done that. I'll say this again and again, Yin. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She smiled and leaned towards him further, so he may hear every word she'll say and how much she meant it. I am no greater being, so I forgive, Katsuki. I can forgive you if you show me how truly you want to make it up to me. The blonde nodded vigorously. I will. I will earn it if you let me. Yin smiled and nodded earnestly. Her hands came to rest on his shoulders, and she held onto him furtively, afraid that this moment with him would vanish the moment she'd let go. He is now more relaxed, alert until ridden with guilt. But that didn't stop him from pulling her towards him by the waist. I'll earn it, Yin. He seals his words by placing a kiss on top of her head. They continue to hold each other with the unwavering faith this time they would make it work no matter what. The days feel much shorter when you're content. Content is the word that embodied Yin's former days, and before she knew it, another month has passed ever since that night. The night in which she and her husband had stepped closer into understanding each other. Yin sighed blissfully as she sunk further into the soft cream sheets. Her eyes began to flutter open as she was soon blinded by the warm light coming from the window. As much as it felt so cozily warm on her skin, the light is painful to her eyes. Having just woken up from the deep slumber, she groaned, and soon a shadow fell on her, shielding her from the light. Blinking to make out the face in front of her, she smiled and regained herself silly, since there's no other person who would greet her in the morning like this. Katsuki, she called for him. Her husband leaned down and smirked was evident on his face as he placed his lips on top of her head. Yes, this all felt so blissful. Yin watched as he leaned away to fix his shirt, all the while sorting through the parchments in his desk. She sighed, stretching an arm all the way up and resting her head upon it as she relaxed. Would it be better for you to join me for breakfast first, Katsuki? It would. He sat up. But there's no joining you if you don't get up. A soft chuckle left Yin's lips. She finally decided to rise. The sheets lingering fell off her naked form. Oh my god! She stretched and reached for her sock and slipped it on before patting her way towards him. Bakugou welcomed her in his arms. He went to caress her waist and her ever-growing stomach. I must confess, I wish to stay here a little longer with you, she said, smiling down at him. Now you're looking very indignant. Don't misunderstand me, husband. I only said that I wished to stay, not that I wanted to, even though I have this uncontrollable urge of wanting to see you every minute and every day. She muttered the last part to herself, but Katsuki's keen ears caught it, seeing by the smug smirk now forming on his lips. I heard that. Yin groaned in the most dramatic way. Ugh, when is this pregnancy going to end? Don't rush it, Sparkles. From what I saw in your sister's situation, all children are uncomfortable devils in nature. My child, although will be very great, I'll make sure of it. Now, Katsuki, don't rest expectations on our child. He can be whatever he wanted to be, great or not. He'll deserve all the love we can offer him. He mustered, raising a brow. Why, I thought you would prefer it to be a boy. Especially you being a king, a boy is expected. There is a truth in Yin's words. Although a girl would be nice to... No, she shook her thoughts away, finding it a bit too absurdly. In truth, she wouldn't mind if it's a boy or a girl. What led her to say that is not unknown to her. It is indeed expected by almost all the people in their kingdom that she'll deliver a boy, an heir, so they call it, as if the opposite gender does not deserve such a title. When Bakugou did not answer, she examined his face. He looked so hesitant, as if he was really to share a complete different idea. Don't tell me, Yin giggled. Oh, Katsuki, you want a girl, don't you? Bakugou heaved a sigh and smirked. I think it'll do me good, especially if she takes after you. A hand gravitated towards your face, caressing and cupping it adorably, her entire being. Yin smiled ever so softly while leaning into his touch. Then she teased him and broke away from his arms. As much as I want this moment to last, I'm afraid that your daughter craves for food. Those spicy ones, especially. She takes after you in that aspect. Bakugou groaned, leaning down in his chair, as his eyes followed her form walking towards the door. I thought you wished you wanted to stay. Nope, food is more important. Come on, get dressed and join me for breakfast. She exited his room to take a bath in her own chambers. On the way there, Yin felt like her breasts are constantly taking away from her due to all these tender moments they have been sharing. Oftentimes, a stray, blank thought would come across her mind. Right now, it was just so happened that she was so randomly reminded of her coop. Yin felt more guilty and more she thought about it. They are doing so well. She had even seen the changes he had worked on himself. Maybe this time for Yin to share the withering scales of the past and start anew? Maybe. Just maybe. There is no need for a coup at all. For days, Yin tried to push away the thoughts of her coup. It did her no good and has, in some instances, prevented her from completely relishing in the blissfulness. But Yin is not one to simply leave a problem behind. Maybe that's why the coup stayed in her mind, because she is yet to come up of a way on how to break her new stance towards the people she has promised changed. The fault lies in her, and she is willing to accept that. But she is unsure whether Uraka, Midoriya, and Aizawa would be able to accept her breaking down from the coup. The overthinking has put a strain on her. In some days, Yin would find herself alone, whereas she would allow her mind to widely deliver her entire attention. In this particular day, it has all gotten too much, and she found herself on the verge of crying. It was terrible of her to spend such tender moments with Bakugou when she's going behind his back with a plan to uprise his throne. And even when she has changed her mind, she couldn't bring herself to admit it to anyone, especially to her husband. There you are. I've been looking for you. Bakugou's voice dawned in the room as she became so stiff she remained glued in her seat, despite Bakugou trying to get her up. when he saw that something is wrong with her. He felt before. Oi, what's wrong? Yin slowly turned her head to face him, and as soon as she met his eyes, she was burnt with shame and had to cower within her own shell again, opening and closing her mouth repeatedly. Yin found that she doesn't have the courage within her, so she sighed and forced a smile. It's nothing, she sighed again. It's nothing. I know how when something is bothering you. Tell me, he coaxed. Perhaps it's just this pregnancy. The physician did tell us that my mood would be changing from time to time. Bakugou was not convinced. He let out a breath and reached out to hold firmly onto his wife's hand. They were cold and shaking. His thumbs ran circles on the back of her palms and comforted her. She started to hold onto him. With his gaze, he pinned her onto a silent battle, encouraging her to let him into her problems so he might aid her. The intimacy softens that transferred into her eye-colored eyes suggests she has yielded, but now fear was almost entirely reflected from her irises. Hatsuki, I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared that everyone might fall apart someday. What are you talking about? We're trying to be better, right? That's what you said? Bakugou tightened his grip. Yes, but I'm just really scared. Hey. He released one hand to caress her cheek. She immediately leaned in and her eyes started to strain from the poison of her incoming tears. Don't be scared. We're doing well. And if we could just keep up at this, then it'll be fine. She tried to avoid his eyes and lean away from his touch, but he chased after her, determined not to let her go. We'll be fine. I'll make sure of it. I stuck my promise, but I will try very hard on becoming better every day. For you, he said, and brought their entwining hand to her stomach. And our child. There is now pain visible in Yin's eyes as guilt has completely swallowed her heart. Guilt felt like a sharpened knife poking at her back, at the urge into jumping at the depths of her doom. It became so strong that it started to cloud her mind, and she was just so ready to reveal it all to Bakugou. She didn't want to hurt him, but revealing she had been planning something behind his back? But the weight of guilt of keeping it a secret from him is just all the same. Oh, Katsuki, Your Majesty. She was about to say it, but a sudden presence in the room disrupted them, and it brought Yin back to her senses. They all turned to see a soldier standing by the doors. Yin was the first to straighten up and stand, and was followed by Bakugou. He is here, said the soldier. Yin widened her eyes and turned her to her husband. He? Bakugou answered. Kirishima. He's meant to come back. The thought of Kirishima carrying news from Igneous made Yin curious, and she was determined to engrave with Kirishima, if it might, forgetting the fact that she's almost said something that might have been her beheading. He wishes to see you immediately, Your Majesty, the soldier added. I'll meet him in the drawing room. Bakugou dismissed the soldier and turned to Yin. She opened her mouth before he let out a word. Let's go. Katsuki, Kirishima must have brought some important news. But you're not all right, he argued. I am now. She smiled, fully convinced him. Your words started to dawn in my mind, and they comfort me. When he looked hesitant, she shakingly placed a kiss on his cheek. I am fine now, Katsuki. Let us now go and meet Kirishima. Now, he had no choice, for she started towards the door and pulled him with her. Bakugou ordealed and marched her pace as they walked to the drawing room. If you want to know what happens next, I'm apologizing, because you're going to have to go to my YouTube channel to find the next part of this episode. It should be up at the same time as this episode, so don't worry about waiting for too long, because it's right there. But anyways, thanks for enjoying. This part of the episode was not dark and gruesome, but the next part will be.